Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm 1 minute late. Also, well impressed that people are here, especially on like a really sunny bank holiday. I almost wasn't here myself. No, I'm joking. I've been looking forward to this all day because I'm a big geek. Someone's asking if this will be recorded. It will be recorded. And if you're here and you've signed up, then you will get sent the recording, which is great. But if you do have any questions live, that's why I do them live. So do record. That was my chair, okay, just in case anyone thought it was anything else. Right, I do have some topics for today, but I'm happy to go off on anything that people want to discuss. I've also spent the whole day, if I'm a little bit weird than usual today, it's because I've spent the whole day making a lecture for EIQ on the endocrine system and hormones, and I've got really deep into it. You know, you get a little bit too deep and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to come back out of this. Anyway, it's going to be very, very useful for personal trainers. The EIQ online course starts on Monday, so obviously I've left it to the week before to do my final lecture. The vast majority of it's all done, but nothing like a little bit of like spice and a deadline to get you going. This episode of Science versus Bullshit has been, what's the right word? Inspired by conversation that I had in the AFM group, which is my business mentoring group. And we were talking about The Biggest Loser and the documentary that had been put out and how badly that has aged and is very, very embarrassing. I mean, at the time, I think people probably could tell how awful it was, but in hindsight, like even more so. And the fact that it was even on TV is pretty crazy. Anyway, then we got on to talking about like other really embarrassing things that people used to promote, and like some really good, like now really good PTs used to promote this kind of stuff as well. But it's interesting to see like the trends in the industry and like what was kind of accepted, and now we look back and we're like, that was really weird. That was a really weird time. So I've made a list of a few of them. I thought I'd go through them, but not just like laugh about them, but also be like, this was what we thought happened. And then unfortunately, some of these are kind of still around. So if you can understand them a little bit better, then you can debunk them and make sure you don't fall for them. And that's what this whole series is all about, is making sure you don't fall for myths and supplements and claims and doing the wrong thing because you don't understand the methodology behind it, which is also why I've spent the whole morning writing about the endocrine system, because so much of the poor information at the moment is around hormones. And when you actually understand that system and how it works and how it's regulated, then you realize that a lot of the stuff that people say makes absolutely no sense. Okay, so let me know if people remember some of these, right? But cutting and bulking, this used to be like the thing. Like even if you were, you know, just your general population person who like wants to get a little bit lean, maybe hasn't even been to the gym before, you know, and then you'll be told what you need to do is bulk to build muscle first, then we're going to do a cut, and then we're going to do a reverse diet, and then you'll be at the weight that you want to be at. And that is just the complete and utter crap. And I think the other time I see this a lot is when people have worked really hard to lose fat to get in a place where they're pretty happy, and then their goal maybe becomes like building muscle, but they're not going to compete at the Olympia, right? They're just like, oh, I'm more focused on performance goal now. Now they've not got like shredded stage lean, but then someone, normally their personal trainer, is like, right, we're going to need to put you in a surplus and you're going to need to bulk in order to build muscle. Again, completely untrue and really detrimental for a lot of people. And for some people, it's just glorified yo-yo dieting, because you cut down and then you end up bulking up, and then you cut down again and you bulk up. And realistically, there's only so much muscle you will be able to build. And if you're in a huge surplus, that doesn't actually mean that you can build any more muscle. What tends to happen is you just put on a ton of fat that you've just worked really hard to lose, right? So it's really demotivating. So that would be something I would massively avoid unless you are competing in a bodybuilding show, or unless you've been very, very lean, and then it's not so much a bulk, it's probably just coming up to like a healthy body fat range where you can build muscle, where you can focus on performance. So that was one that came up. I'd definitely stay away from that. Another one that came up was branched chain amino acids. I have actually quite recently seen someone promote this. No, in fact, it was somebody who quite rightly, in all the right ways, debunked collagen. And then right at the last moment when I was like, oh, it's quite a good post, they were like, yeah, so you should take amino acids instead. And I was like, or just eat protein, which has amino acids in. Like, there's no need to be supplementing with this stuff. You could actually just eat real food. So anyway, the theory behind branched chain amino acids was that one of these branched chain amino acids, known as leucine, is known to be like the trigger of muscle protein synthesis. And so we thought that if you just took leucine, then you could just easily trigger muscle protein synthesis with, like, very low calories, because you're just taking that one key amino acid. Now, the issue with that is that even though it might trigger muscle protein synthesis, you can't build muscle without all the essential amino acids. So actually, you're still better just eating protein. And the response saturates at about 3 grams of leucine. So just having more and more and more is naturally a good thing. And then there was some research about how overstimulating with amino acids was actually quite negative, and that you should leave this like refractory period where actually in an ideal world you'd have a protein intake and then an increase in amino acids in your bloodstream, and then you'd leave for a period of time for that spike in muscle protein synthesis to come back down to baseline for it then to be spiked again. That would be the ideal. But anyway, just ramming down loads of branched chain amino acids, not a good idea. And I distinctly remember, which is funny because they're quite like well known in the industry still, but I distinctly remember a video from someone who was like stopping his I don't know if it was his partner or whatever, but anyway, was stopping like the person he was training with during their workouts to like force them to like swallow these branched chain amino acid tablets. I was just like, this is bad. Anyway, that's another one to avoid. Lisa, question, do we need creatine, and if so, what form and how much? You don't need creatine. Would you benefit from it? The vast majority of people, yes. I would always take creatine monohydrate. I would always just take it as powder. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that there was some tests done on some of the creatine gummies that didn't actually have any creatine in them. That was not a surprise to me in the slightest. I would just stick to creatine monohydrate. It's a powder, mix it with a little bit of water and like just shot it down. Probably the easiest way to take it. Or you can put it in a protein shake. Doesn't really matter. And how much? Probably I would start, if you're a woman, with 3 grams, but like 3 to 5 grams is absolutely enough. And and people who don't get a lot from their diet are probably going to benefit more. So vegetarians and vegans are going to benefit more from taking creatine than other people. But yeah, it's interesting. And like there's really interesting research on potential cognitive benefits at like actually substantially higher dosages than this. But I think it's a little bit early to be recommending that. And usually it comes from there's already some kind of neurological decline going on, and then it seems to be able to help that to an extent. There's also some really interesting research on depression as well. So it is an interesting supplement. I don't think it's ever going to be a game changer for any of these things. Like, it's certainly not going to, cure your depression. It's certainly not going to mean that you can suddenly lift a huge amount of weight. I think I've had people take creatine and then be like, yeah, I thought it was a scam. It didn't work for me. Now, you're probably not going to feel much of a difference. Like, I don't think I can really feel the difference between when I'm taking creatine and when I'm not. It's a much more subtle thing. So if you think about this, like similar to, I don't know, if you were a little bit deficient in iron or something and you started taking an iron supplement, you wouldn't suddenly expect to feel completely different. It's the same kind of thing. It's like over time, there might be a small benefit. It's worth taking. The reason that people, like I sometimes see people like really kind of overhype creatine and get really excited about it. And I think it's because it's really one of the only supplements that we actually have good, strong evidence for working. So it often gets a bit overhyped. But yes, I would recommend taking it, especially if it doesn't cause any negatives for you. How do you optimize muscle building? Do you need to be in a surplus or just at maintenance and develop your training? This is such a good question, and obviously totally relates to like the cutting versus bulking. If you if your sole goal, Jenny, is to great surname, Jenny. Jenny, I actually won't say your surname in the case you don't want everyone to see it, but it's very similar to mine. If you want to optimize for building muscle, then being in a slight surplus is probably a good idea. Caveat to that is it depends on your current body fat percentage. And that's something that not a lot of people really consider. They're like, oh, do I need to be in a surplus to build muscle? Well, not if you've got a load of body fat already. If anything, that actually might be a negative. So I would be, relatively lean, and then maybe you'd want to be in a slight surplus depending on what your start point is. The other consideration is your training age and like how long you've been lifting, but not just lifting, but lifting with like progressive overload and good training and good nutrition and good recovery. The longer you've been doing that, the harder it is to build muscle. So there might be a slight benefit to being in a surplus. When I say surplus, most people take this way too far, right? So it's not like what a lot of bodybuilders do, which is just like, you're in like 1,000 calories a day surplus and you're gaining a ton of weight really quickly. That is not muscle. Like, even if you're very quick at building muscle, like that's not muscle. Even if you're on steroids, like that's not muscle. We probably only want to be in like a 100 to 200 calorie surplus. So it's not like you need to be in a huge surplus in order to build muscle, because your body can't utilize much more than that in order to build muscle. So then you're just going to be putting on fat. So are you saying maintenance calories are fine to build muscle from, as well as a deficit? It would just be hypertrophy. I think, sorry, that was meant to say deficit if needing to lose weight. So a lot of my clients will build muscle and lose fat at the same time. That happens all the time. Now, it especially happens when you're in a position where you have quite a lot of fat to lose and you're quite new to resistance training. That is like the perfect storm for body recomposition, i.e. losing fat and building muscle at the same time. And that's because your muscle is very sensitive to the stimulus of training because it's a new stimulus, and your fat cells are quite full and you have a lot of fat to lose. So actually you don't need to be in a huge deficit. It's relatively easy to stick to your diet. And that's like a great position to actually be able to do both of those things at the same time. If you're already quite lean, that becomes harder. If you're already very well trained, that becomes harder. But you have to think about those positions. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because if you're already very lean, then actually you don't have much fat to lose. If you're already very well trained, then actually you probably already have a lot of muscle. And when you lose the fat and see that muscle, then it's probably going to look like you've built muscle and lost fat anyway. So hopefully that helps. It always kind of depends. It's not quite as simple as that. I've heard that creatine makes you bloated or store water / gain weight. Is this true? Yes. To store creatine, you will need water, because creatine is stored within your muscle and it requires some water to store. That is completely normal. You can't avoid that. So if anyone's telling you like, oh, this creatine, doesn't store any water with it, it's like, okay, then it doesn't work, right? It's stored in a very similar way to carbohydrate within your muscle. So when you store carbohydrate within your muscle, you require water to store that as well when it's stored as glycogen. So that's why when you drop your carbs very quickly, you'll lose quite a lot of weight, but not necessarily fat, because you're also losing water weight. So with creatine, you also need water to store the creatine within your muscle. Again, it's not a bad thing. This is quite a good way of like just assessing how obsessed you are with the scales. Like, the scales will probably go up a little bit In most women, honestly, not that much, because most of us don't have that much muscle that we could store that much creatine, that it would store that much water, that would have that much impact on the scales, right? So it's probably going to be a very small amount, if anything, that you notice. But equally, like, it's not fat, so why do you care if you're a pound or two heavier? And like, that's actually quite an interesting question to then like kind of probe yourself with a little bit. Okay. Thank you. Yes, great name. How lean would you recommend before increasing calories by that slight amount? I'm pretty lean, but just thought I'd need to lose the last couple of pounds first. Yeah. See, if you're in a position where you're like, I'm already quite lean, what's the point then losing more weight to then be in a surplus to then put the weight back on, thinking that you're going to build more muscle? Like, I would probably just stay in the like relatively lean, healthy body fat range you're in and focus on building muscle if building muscle is the goal. How long will you see creatine weight gain for, or when would the scales start evening out? They won't. The creatine weight gain will stay while you're taking the creatine, because the creatine is being stored in your muscle. The only time that might not be quite so true is if you're doing a loading phase, which I wouldn't suggest doing anyway. So while you are supplementing with creatine, much like while you are eating enough carbs to fill your muscles with glycogen, then you will weigh a little bit more. Again, not really an issue, but it's just water. Okay, the next thing that came up was reverse dieting. And I think this is probably going to link into a few of the questions we've got here as well. So the theory of this, and this is like thrown around a lot on social media, there's a couple of ways that people use this. One is that if you have someone who's maybe on like 1,200 calories and not losing weight and really should be in a deficit, people will say, when I say people, I mean like maybe trainers who don't really understand how metabolism works. They'll say, what you need to do is reverse diet so that you're ramping up your metabolism. We're going to slowly increase your calories over time. That's going to increase your metabolism. And that way you're going to be able to lose fat on higher calories. Now, that does actually happen, right? So when you increase someone's calories from like a really big deficit, like 1,200, where they're not losing weight, and then you slowly increase it up, what's happening is you tend to increase their adherence. So over time, it might be that actually when you get them to 1,600 calories, that's a sustainable deficit for them. So over time, rather than sticking to 1,200 one day and then binging the next day, they actually stick to 1,600 for the whole week. And that's created a substantially bigger deficit for them. And thus they lose more body fat. It's got nothing to do with ramping up the metabolism, right? They're kind of selling a lie there. The other time people say that you need to do this is reversing back out of a deficit. Again, not true. Like if your maintenance needs are, 2,000 calories and you're on 1,500 calories, you're on a 500 calorie deficit, you don't need to slowly edge that up week by week. You're going to end up just being in a 400 calorie deficit for a week, and then a 300 calorie deficit for a week, and a 200 and 100. And you're going to be in a deficit for longer than you need. If you're like, I'm happy with my body composition, I'm at the end of my diet, let's bring you back up to estimated maintenance. There's no need to slowly do that. You're just prolonging your diet, prolonging the deficit. Come back up to estimated maintenance. I normally put people a little bit lower than what I think they will be, especially when I'm working with women who have worked really hard to lose weight and they're quite scared about maintaining that and maybe putting the weight back on. So say I thought someone's maintenance was 2,000, I'd probably start them on 1,800 and then slowly, like, I'd maybe put them to like 1,900. And then if you add in like error and the fact that most people are likely to underestimate how many calories that they're eating, well, they're probably going to be about 2,000 anyway. So that's more just like coaching experience. But really what you want to do is come back up to maintenance straight away when you're finished dieting. There's no need to prolong that deficit. Okay, I've done that one. What is a healthy fat range percentage-wise? So I wouldn't even look at percentage. And the reason for that is that you're not going to be able to accurately track your body fat percentage. So I really focus on like where you look and feel your best and where you perform your best, and that's probably going to be about right for you. But there's really no point like having a percentage range because no one's accurately tracking their body fat percentage on a regular basis. So it's quite a bad measure to go off. So I tend just to ignore that. And then the other thing that came up was metabolic damage, which is kind of related to reverse dieting because a lot of people will like frame reverse dieting as the solution to metabolic damage. And this is often said to be from like dieting for too long or dieting on too lower calories. Now, normally what's happened, as I've kind of just explained, is that adherence has been impacted. So you've been dieting for a period of time and actually your adherence is reduced. So you're eating more, or often what's happening is if you try to stick to too lower calories, people then tend to like binge eat or overeat at other times. So you don't have metabolic damage, but it does feel like what you're doing isn't working anymore and that you're trying to stick to really low calories and not getting results. And I totally get that cycle because you'll lower your like quote unquote good day calories more and more and more, making it less and less and less sustainable to stick to. And then you end up overeating on other days. And it's very easy to think like, well, if I've stuck to, my really low calories for 4 days and I only had one day that I didn't stick to my calories, like surely like that's not going to impact. But actually it's so easy to out-eat your deficit, especially if you're a woman and especially if you're a small woman and you've got like quite a modest deficit. It's very easy to have like one day on higher calories and like completely blow your whole deficit. Now, one thing that does happen when you diet is known as adaptive thermogenesis. And there are a few components to this. So one of them is simply that as you lose weight, you become a smaller person. So I'm working with a lot of women coming off Mounjaro at the moment, and a lot of them have lost like a lot of weight. So something that's actually quite rare up until like recently with weight loss drugs to see. So like 50, 60 kilograms, like they've lost a huge amount of weight. Now, what they will experience is their maintenance needs before they started dieting when they were like 50 odd kilograms heavier are much higher than their maintenance needs now that they are such a smaller person. So you need to figure out new maintenance based on new weight. And then the other thing that happens, and this is more like during the diet, is that your body tends to try and adapt to you being in a deficit by making you more hungry and move less. Now, this is kind of less of a concern now because so many people wear things like Apple Watches or Oura Rings or track their steps in some way. So you're getting at least some kind of measure of their non-exercise activity thermogenesis. But there are like, these are quite old studies now, but really interesting, where they put people in a deficit and they see how different people respond. And some people respond really strongly in regards to protecting their own energy, so protecting their own body fat stores, which means that they end up moving significantly less without even really thinking about it. So they might like habitually just start walking 5,000 steps less a day. And for some people, that made up like almost all of their deficit. So they'd created this 500 calorie deficit by eating less, but actually that was negated by the fact that they moved so much less. So that was really interesting. And I think probably happens slightly less now that we track things like steps, but it's still something to be aware of, is that your body will be kind of predisposed if you're in a deficit to want to keep hold of as much energy as possible, meaning that it will increase your drive to eat and then reduce your drive to move. So it's maintaining as much energy as possible. And I would say that one of the big factors as to why it's easier for some people to lose weight compared to other people is that some people do not respond as strongly. So some people, you put them in a deficit and almost immediately their hunger ramps up and their drive to move, it like hits the floor. So they find that really hard to lose weight. Other people, you put them in a deficit and like maybe they're a little bit more hungry, but it's not unmanageable hunger. And it doesn't seem to really have much of an impact on how much they move, which means that it's much easier for them to be able to maintain a deficit and then actually lose fat. Is eating too much protein a bad thing? And actually just eat a lot of protein and it all fits within my calorie range, but just curious if it's to a detriment. No, Laura, I think you'll be absolutely fine. Obviously, if you're going to real extremes here and you're like, I'm eating 200 grams of protein a day, and then that also impacts like how much fiber you're getting in, how much fruit and veg you're getting in, if you're getting in essential fat levels, like then I'd be like, okay, this is maybe not a good thing. But if you can fit it all in and you're still getting a nice, healthy, balanced diet, dream, babe, keep going. This might be a stupid question, but I've heard you refer to small women. What do you consider small based on BMI or height? It's not a stupid question. So technically, a small woman is anyone under 5'3", I think, the last time I checked. Although I always thought I was average height, which is 5'5". But apparently I'm above average, so I'll take that. But anyway, that's technically what a small woman is. Now, when I refer to small women, I really I'd encompass in that anyone who needs to diet on lower calories. One of the reasons I focus on small women is that to be in a healthy BMI range, you will need to eat less. So if you're taller, then to be in that healthy BMI range, because obviously your BMI is related to your weight and your height, you can be heavier and your basal metabolic rate or your resting energy needs will be higher. If you're a smaller person, to maintain a healthy weight, assuming that everything else is the same, like you both do 10,000 steps, you both train 3 times a week, blah, 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 then you will need to weigh less and then thus you will need to consume less. And one of the reasons that's so hard is that in our environment, like food choices tend to be very high in calories. Like, and if you want to eat out and you want to, enjoy yourself and you want to be on the go a little bit, like it just everything takes up a higher percentage of your calorie needs, as opposed to somebody else. So I'll often compare like a small woman who has like even an average sized man as a partner and they go out to like Nando's or something. And even if you're being quite sensible at Nando's, like it's easily like 1,000 calories, right? For one person, that's, they can still have another sort of like 1,100 calories probably if you're a man, right? Even like the average man. And then for a small woman, that might be like the vast majority of your calories for the day. And now you've got, 300 calories to 400 calories maybe to play with for the rest of the day if you're trying to stay in a deficit. Like that's a really hard thing to do. And the average meal out is 1,200 calories. So it just becomes really hard, which is why I kind of focus on small women so much. Someone told me recently that because we have PCOS, any food we eat, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Someone told me recently that because we have PCOS, any food we eat will double in calories. But surely that cannot be true. Those calories have to come from somewhere. I've lost 80 pounds. Wow, that's incredible. Well done. In a calorie deficit with PCOS. So it feels like it can't be true, but maybe for others with PCOS. No, that's the biggest load of fucking bullshit I've ever heard. Where do people come up with that? And it's such a random thing. Oh, Jay, do you know what happens? Doubles. When you eat calories, just doubles in calories. Like, no, that's not true at all. And I mean, you're kind of proof of that. I'm pretty sure if all of the calories you ate doubled, you would have found it very, very hard to lose 80 pounds. So yeah, that's not what happens with PCOS. And actually, a lot of the reasons that we thought women with PCOS struggled more with weight loss don't now have kind of been disproven. The main reason for that was that we thought, because of some research, that women with PCOS had like a significantly lower basal metabolic rate, and in some cases like 60% of what we would have expected, which was like pretty crazy that would happen. But anyway, since then more research has come out and that doesn't seem to be the case at all, and actually has a pretty standard basal metabolic rate. So the reasons that it's harder with PCOS are much more likely to do with insulin resistance, to do with hunger levels, to do with any other symptoms that you're having, often worse cycles or more irregular cycles and everything that comes with that. So it's not so much about the fact that something has changed with the energy balance equation, and much more to do with like your own symptoms. Amazing. Thanks. Defo eating loads of fruit and veg too, and healthy fats. Okay, fine. Any pros to using BMI is always viewed and spoken about negatively. Honestly, Louise, I think BMI with a pinch of like, I was going to say salt. That's not really what I mean. I mean like BMI with some like logic and a little bit of just common sense is a really good measure. So most of the time, the kickback about BMI is that there are some people who would be an obese BMI but are actually athletes. Now, anyone would just look at someone and be like, oh, you're clearly a professional rugby player. Let's not use BMI, or I'm not now concerned that you're technically overweight in the BMI. Like, I feel like if you just had a little bit of common sense, like that would never be an issue. So I don't really pay so much attention to that. I'm trying to think what other. Sometimes people will also say like it's not just about BMI. No, of course it's not. Health is not like one metric, but as a general goal, to be in a healthy BMI range is probably a really good goal for the vast majority of people. And you'll kind of know if that's not you. Like if you're like, I just have an insane amount of muscle mass, like that is a very small percentage of the population who are genuinely overweight or obese because of how much muscle mass they have. If that's not you, then actually a goal of being somewhere around a healthy BMI range is a really good goal to have. So yeah, just use it with a little bit of common sense and you'll be fine. Okay. Was there anything else I wanted to go over today? There might not be, in which case, if you have any questions, fire away. I have many messages to reply to if anyone is waiting for a reply from me, because I am giving out some information about my Energy First program and also my free menopause guide. So if you want either of those, just shoot me a message on Instagram. I will send it over with love. And yeah, someone had messaged me saying that they got a lot of value from the menopause PDF that I did quite a long time ago now, but I mean, it's still very relevant and good information. And there's a few things that are a little bit different. So there's a lot of science within it of like, this is what we know from science. This is what's happening. And like, these are the changes that you might potentially need to make. But there's also quite a lot of anecdote from working with now thousands of menopausal women with like what does work and what doesn't work. And not just the, hey, newsflash, you still need to be in a calorie deficit. Like that's not overly helpful. Obviously, that's like a kind of first line. That understanding and acceptance is useful. But then different ways of applying that. And I'm actually quite a big fan of a slightly lower carb diet, especially if you've tried a lot of things and they haven't really been working for you. So that will talk you through how to do that. And hopefully it's useful. It's totally free. Would you mind going through the next intake of EIQ online coaching? Is there still time to join? Yes, Louise, you can join. Do you have any specific questions that you want me to go through? Because I'm more than happy to do that. I'm really excited about it. I think I'm so excited about it today because I've just been like writing about it today. Let me see. I can probably show you. So this is the course content. Now, this was the part I was a little bit worried about because module 1 is like basically a lot of anatomy and physiology, which can be a little bit dry. But what I've done is managed to not make it dry. So it's actually quite interesting. I found it really interesting writing it. So I've put analogies in there, put little stories in there. I've definitely made it applicable. One of the things I really didn't enjoy when I was learning this stuff at university and doing my personal training qualification many years ago was that it wasn't really very directly applied. So I was like, oh, cool, ATP, but like, why do I care? Or like, oh, great, the HPA access, but like, what does that mean for me and my clients? And if I don't kind of link those things, it's very easy just to like learn it and forget it. So all this, and actually the way that we teach on EIQ is very much like applied. Like, this is how this is going to help your clients, or this is why when people say this about cortisol, they don't actually understand how it works and what the fluctuations should look like, and that cortisol should rise in the morning, and short-term fluctuations in things like insulin and cortisol are actually good things, and this is how the system works, and this is how it's regulated. So actually now I'm quite excited about that first module. The second module we've had a lot of help with from other experts, mainly because the in-depth science of training isn't Amelia and I's like forte, I would say, or it's not like our number one topic. So we've had some of the absolute best people in the industry come in and teach on that for us, which is great. And then we have the first section of EIQ nutrition, which makes up the nutrition part of the EIQ online course. And then we go through energy and health, fat loss, hypertrophy and non-dieting nutrition, women's health, which also includes hypothalamic amenorrhea, menopause, emotional eating, considerations around the menstrual cycle, PCOS. And then we've got this, which I think is honestly the fundamental to actually being a good coach and getting people results, which is behavior change. Like, it's one thing knowing all this stuff above of like, this is the anatomy and physiology, and this is how you program training, and this is all you need to know about nutrition and women's health. But knowing that is one thing and actually doing it is another thing. So again, we've had some incredible people come and teach for us on this. We've done some lectures ourselves, but we've got really, really incredible people contributing to this. I'm very, very excited about the behavior change aspect of the course. And I'd say that's like the key to being an incredible coach, is not just knowing what to do, but also being able to get people to action that. Then we have a whole section on weight loss drugs. I'm also going to add into here a section on coming off weight loss drugs. I've made a bit of a resource for that that's going to be available to all of my clients on Commit to 6, EC Method, AFM, EIQ. But I think will be really useful. I'm doing a lot of work on that at the moment. So that's going to hopefully, I plan to do it by the start of the next EC Method intake, which is the 8th of September. So there's my deadline. I'm holding myself to it. And then we've got basically how to apply this as an online coach. So how to package this up and deliver it in the best possible way to your clients as an online coach. So there you go. That's us running through the full course. And it's taken us a long time to do this. We've had many a setback, and finally it's ready, which is very exciting. Okay, some questions on this. When it starts, so it starts on the 1st of September, which is on Monday, which is very exciting. There are weekly calls, but you don't need to attend them live. They are Q&As. So glad we have you to bust all the bullshit that's out there. You're so welcome. Send it my way. I will break it down. Louise, be really excited to have you on EIQ. If you have any questions, let me know. You say, I'm currently training to be a personal trainer, so feel this will complement, as I think I'll be doing more online coaching than in person. Yeah, this is actually exactly why we created the course, because so many people really want to be online coaches or are more suited to being online coaches. And yet the only way to do that is to do your whole in-person personal training qualification and then just start coaching online, even though no one's ever taught you how to coach online or what to do or how to program or which apps to use or how to actually deliver a service in a way that's going to get people results. So I was like, there's a big gap there. And I think a lot of people need that. So that's why we did it. Do you need to be a PT or even want to be a PT to do this? No. In fact, I don't know if Emily's watching, but she's a prime example of actually not a personal trainer, just really interested and has done the qualification. And a lot of my clients have actually over the years. So you don't need to be a personal trainer. But if you're someone who's like really into this, like if you even vaguely like some of the stuff I talk about here and you're like, oh, I kind of like it when you go into the science. Well, that's like, this is just like high level chit chat. That's like it in depth. you'll know exactly how things are working, but also in what I like to think is quite a fun and applied way. I think the biggest compliment I ever got was that, like, the way that we teach on EIQ is like, and this was from someone who's done a nutrition qualification at university, and she was like, it's just so engaging and you have this like real skill of doing it. And I was like, oh, that's the nicest thing. Love this. Feels more in depth than my current PT qualification course. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty in depth. It's meant to be kind of like above that level. So Jenny, I would love to have you on EIQ. Shoot me a message if you want to chat about it. Laura, great, thank you. I'm defo going to think about it. Sounds right up my street with all the sciencey stuff. Yeah, you'll love it. If you like science and you like knowing how things work, like me, and like Amelia is just like the brain that woman has, incredible. And a lot of the stuff that I was saying this to her the other day, and I was like, I hope this comes across in the right way, but because she speaks a lot about the more psychological and relationship with food side of stuff on social media, like Amelia is so sciencey. Like, she has a PhD in like anatomy and physiology, like, or exercise physiology. Like, that's her bread and butter. Like, she knows that stuff. And when you see her like come to life on it, I'm like, oh, she's good. She's good. Oh, thanks, Laura. I'd love to learn from you. Would also consider this. Is it accredited? Yes, it is endorsed by Active IQ. The accreditation process was something that I don't want to talk about. No, basically, it's very hard to get something accredited if it's not already a course. So if we wanted to do a personal training course, they're like, oh yeah, cool. You can make a personal training course because we have standards to hold it to. When you want to create a new course with like, there's not one that is for online coaching, very hard to do, as we've discovered. But anyway, we've kind of found a workaround because you actually don't need, I mean, none of my clients have ever asked what accreditations I have. Kind of wish that they would now because I spend a lot of money on them, but we've had a workaround because we can basically get insurance if you complete the EIQ nutrition course, and you've done your at least level 2 qualification, then you can get insurance as an online coach. So that's how we've managed to find a way around that. But I'm not going to say that. Okay, I'll say it a little bit. I think most accreditations are a bit of a scam. Okay, end of call. Thank you for your time. But I do, especially in the fitness industry. I think you're often paying to be part of these like things that you don't even really know what they do or who they're for. And if you're not working in a gym, then yeah. Great, just to show off once I've done it. Oh no, you'll be a fully accredited EIQ online coach. It's just you won't necessarily have like a certain number of reps points or something with it, but you will be able to be insured. So really anything that you'd actually want, you get. Okay, I hope that was useful. I will be back next week. If anyone has any topics that they want me to cover, one of them is going to be magnesium and sleep. I might go over some of the stuff that I've been doing on EIQ in a much lighter way. If you are interested in joining EIQ, like I say, we shut on Monday, so you only have a week. You all have my WhatsApp, which is on the website. So go onto the website, click, shoot me a message if you've got any questions. And yeah, we've got a really nice group of coaches starting on Monday, so I'm very excited. All right, bye everyone.